Hello
Hey,
again.
hi.
It's nice to see you again. Well, no. Actually, it is. Well, uh, as far as I can recall, we are covering now the cubes part,
Okay.
correct? Based on
Yeah.
the backlogs. Based. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I've been doing those other videos. I sent you the link to, so I've been too much talking today, but um, I'll go ahead and just do the entire screen here. And so one of the things we should probably look at is this is um, this is logging onto Compass's site. So this is what Compass would log into externally. Um, Thought I hit login. So again, this is our white labeled Pentaho. Um, and so this is I think this is as an admin, so I can create files. I just kind of want to I'll go over a few things here about the analytics thing. There's a couple things. Um, this doesn't seem to have. I must not be an admin on this site, because otherwise there's some, we can just go over here for a second and see if this thing's up and running. This is in my vCloud, and it's nice to have us, in fact, I'll just kind of show you what my vCloud looks like, just for grins. So when I log on here, we'll go find mine's down at the bottom. I think it's this one. And so when you're in here, you can create you can go to catalogs. Hopefully Roberto can show you this, but you can go to the analytics catalog, and then there's these templates. And so like you could pick this and say, I want to create a new VApp out of like this analytics 2.3. And like if you go look at it, it's got these machines in it. So what it would do would be create one that has basically these machines where you've got an appliance, a BA server, config machine, tenant machine, the domain controller that you notice that's a Windows machine, the analytics service, which is our service API, and then a tools machine, which is another Windows machine that just kind of helps you. You could then add another box if you wanted to, not to the template, but after you create your VApp. So that's kind of, you go in here and you can do that. Let me just go back to my machine. I think it's this one, my set of machines. I don't like that view. I like this view. It shows me my machine. So we're going to be hitting this BA server, and you'll notice there's 2 IP addresses. This is a little bit off topic, but all these internal IP addresses are the same. So these boxes, when they talk to each other, like when we set this up, we always know that the tenant database is on 114.51. But if I'm going to get to it externally, I would use this 113.55. So we should see over here 113.55. I've logged in. I just kind of wanted to go over, like this, you can manage data sources, which is also on this front screen. You can also show hidden files when we browse stuff. Not sure what's under tools. You can refresh various of the caches. There's not a lot to do here really, other than, you can create a new dashboard or an analysis report. I think you've seen this. I just kind of wanted to go by. Here's our cubes. And so we have like, if we go item sales daily, so that's going to hit the daily aggregate table. And the reason I'm going through this first is you'll kind of see that where this stuff comes from when we get into the cubes. You've got these measures, so we can look at gross revenue, discount. You can say I want year, maybe across the top, and this should go out and then so apparently in this database I only have 2013, but maybe I want months then underneath that, so it would be years and then months underneath. Apparently I've only got 2 months. And then rows, you could say, well, I want cashier, primary job down here, and you'll see how it's it's going to slice up the data. And then there's charts and things that you can use for this, so you can see, hey, we got data for these guys. You can filter out by enterprise, let's say. And so this was one of the things that used to take a real long time loading. And so I've only got these 2 in here, but then you can say, hey, I only want to see it for this particular enterprise, and then it refreshes and shows the data. So this is kind of the Mondrian cube, kind of is what's displayed over here on the left, and how you can sort of slice and dice. And one of the things that I'm going to log out of this one.
Rob,
Yeah.
Rob, just to make it clear, the behavior that is that it goes. You select a cube, which is a Mondrian cube, which is an XML file. Okay.
Yes.
Then when you drag and drop the measures, dimensions, internally it does, and it goes to the cube, and the cube goes to somewhere in the code which does an SQL, correct?
Yes. It generates, well, so for instance here we can look at the, I think it's the Mondrian, the MDX log. Why didn't it show anything? So this kind of shows what it did, and here it's like it shows that it's executing this SQL, right? And so the Mondrian definition sort of tells it the relationships and the keys, which we'll get into in a minute, and then the Mondrian generates either queries against its own cache, or in this case queries against the database and things like that. And so it runs these various things. So you've got this sort of MDX, sort of nomenclature, right? Which there's documentation online where you can find out, but it's like, oh, it's from Item Sales Daily, but this is really the Mondrian stuff, and then the Mondrian ends up generating a bunch of queries against SQL. So that's kind of how it works. Does that help answer that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and likewise, when you're an administrator, so on your own box, one of the things is these looking at the MDX log and the actual log of what it's generating is kind of useful. Versus, you can also get that out of the Pentaho logs and things like that.
Rob, I'm sorry. Okay, I can see your.
Okay. So yeah, before we leave this, so this is the report. I'll go ahead and get rid of this report. And since you asked that other question, we'll go into sort of manage these data sources. And we do this during the installation, but there's sort of these different data sources. So we were looking at item sales, and it's this analysis cube. It comes from, there's the Mondrian file, but then you also have to tell it the data source, and we set it to this DW Agilicis. And then there's also this dynamic schema processor, which is is run, and it's code that we wrote, and we can look at that now or later, but it's I think that's what we use to do some of the, when it runs these reports, it actually uses some hooks in that code. And we should see that in the Mondrian cube of where this gets called. But this is where you say, hey, what library is this thing, is this using? And it's using this SSO Agilysys DSP jar file that got included with the stuff. And so that's it's a hook into the Mondrian stuff that we use. So it's really this DW Agilysys data source and this. And so if we look, here's the DW Agilysys data source. It's just a straight JDBC connection, basically. So you could actually point at, I happen to be pointing at Postgres on this 114.51. If this is still up, it's looking at the tenant database internally. So we're running on this box, and it's pointing at this database. And so, it's got the username and password you can test, but that's how you tie a particular tenant database to this thing. There's no reason you couldn't have multiple, databases or data sources connected to this, but in our implementation, we basically have our one data warehouse tied to this DW Agilysys data source. And then that's what the cubes, when we create the cubes, we tell it, hey, use this one here, this DW Agilysys. And so there's, as you can tell, I have other ones in here than, these are the LMS analysis cubes. This one is not in the operations mart, is not in the distribution that we install for the tenant. So anyway, that's kind of how we, you create these things. So if you go in and you change a cube, you can just come in here and you change check sales. You can edit this, and then you can just say, hey, I want to point at my cubes. This thing is in Crasser Analytics main cubes. It's pointed to my Git repository. So if I have one of them here, I can just point at it and upload that new one. That's how you would update a cube manually. So that's kind of the front end. And likewise, if we go over here to, and this one is the Compass system. So if I create a new analysis report, this should be using, there's the old cubes and the new cubes, and so these are the new ones. I'll show you an old one against the hourly, for instance. You say okay, opens up, and then let's say we're going to add a filter for enterprises, and so we grab enterprise. I think we grab enterprise and we dump it up here. Oh, maybe this is the new one. So we can go ahead and add an enterprise and say okay. And this was the item sales hourly. Could be this is cached cached data. So if I say new analysis report, and I thought this was the new key. What did you say?
Because what you were trying to show me is that when you drag enterprise, it takes like forever in loading. Okay.
Yeah. Well, these both work the same way. So this was item sales hourly. Oh, I grabbed the same thing. At least it looks like it. Let me just try one more time here.
Are you sharing your screen? Ah, okay.
Yeah, I think so. No, I think this is the same thing. Anyway, there the two cubes they handle things slightly differently. But anyway, if we you know, go ahead and do gross revenue, hey, that came up pretty quick. You know, we can do items sold there. Then if you do like full date across the top, oh no, I don't. Doggone, I don't think I want to do that. Let's say we do column or rows. Didn't grab it. I'm do enterprises. I must not be grabbing this right. And of course, we filtered it by that. We can do now. This might actually take a while because I think it's got to go down through all the doing a distinct. So this is why sometimes, I mean, you would expect this to come back pretty quick. So if we did year columns, oh, so that came back fairly quick. Anyway, you can see we've got this is the way it works, and then you can look at the store procedures. You know, a person could even log into Postgres and see the queries that are being made against it. But we have had troubles on this item sales hourly report with, sometimes it comes back fairly quick like it did for this, and then other times not. Like if you remove a filter, we'll see how quickly it comes back, because now it's having to go through. It's not just limiting to Compass 499. It's going across all the enterprises, and so it's probably a much bigger list, and it's having to take a lot longer. Still takes fairly long, and so these are some of the kind of the performance things. Anyway, I wanted to show you this. We can sort of come back to this in a bit. So the cubes are down in here, a thing called cubes. And so here's the item sales. Now this, I believe, is the old item sales one. And let me just scroll to the bottom. We had item sales monthly, item sales daily. And so these are the layout of this thing is, this is a cube definition. Here's the table that we pull from, right? So it's the item sales hourly. It's got a caption, description. There is a tool that you can use to work with these, but I find it easier just to work in the XML. I can go over that later with you. Anyway, so basically this says, hey, it's this table, it's in this schema. You know, and we already said that it knows where to get it from that JDBC connection in the managed data sources. And then this row security, I'm thinking that that's part of that. Let me just go see if that's over here in the, I think it's down in, no, it's not common, sorry. It's down here in Pentaho Custom is where that DSP code is. So it's this Agilysys DSP. That's not where, I don't think that that's where that comes from. I'm just, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here. anyway, these two, Agilysys DSP and SQL Generator, are some of the custom code that we use within our thing. So we're back at the item sales cube. This row security, this locations is in the session. So when a person logs in, they get this populated, and so I pretty much think that this is part of Mondrian that says, hey, you add this to it, that basically this is in whatever is in this list of locations, it's in the session. And so this is how we limit what a person can see looking at the item sales table, is it limits it to a specific set of locations. And there's stuff in the BA server that runs these KTR script files that go out and figure out for that user against the tenant database what locations they have access to. So like an admin would have location, they wouldn't be limited, they'd have everything. And so I believe that would be null. And so, and then it populates location ID. I think you get all the locations in there. I'm not sure if it does it. And, you know, it's possible that admins get something where I'm not sure about this, but, you know, it's possible that this, doing an in like this, is not very efficient in SQL. I've always kind of wondered about that aspect of it. Anyway, let's not get tied up there. This cube basically says, here's dimension usages for like calendar, item location, report category, a bunch of the dimensions. And then here's the measures down here. It basically says where it pulls it from, right? It's pulling it from the gross revenue out of this table we defined up here, consumed cost, discount amount. It's pretty straightforward. You're giving it descriptions, which are the tooltips that come up. What you want to do, you're going to sum these things, that type of thing. And there's a whole Pentaho documentation on how this, you know, how you define these things. And then there's some examples with declaring snowflake schemas and star schemas and things like that. Then we have this. We have a standard dimension SKU listed here, but these others are dimension usages. And so you might say, well, where are those? Well, those are all defined up here, like meal period. So down here we say dimension usage, meal period, and it references this, which basically says, okay, here's the hierarchy. Again, it's coming from this table. There's the security that says it can only be in these enterprises. And then you've got basically meal period ID and a name. And then meal period is also a property. If we go back to our thing over here and we look down for meal period, meal period shows up here. There's also this one next to it, so you can actually look at how do you add, so if we added meal period here, and this thing is still, I think, was still refreshing. I think, anyway, what you can do is you can show the properties and you see there's a meal period ID, so you could add the meal period ID as well. But I think this thing is taking a long time because we don't have a filter on it, and so it's probably doing some, it's not able to filter that list down, and so it's probably going across those, you know, nearly a billion items. So again, if we, you know, we could add in here and we could say we want these enterprises. And this should be able to cut down the number of records that it has to go across, and hopefully it will come back quicker for us. But this is kind of the problem we're having with some of the performance issues. So one of the things, yeah, go ahead.
I have one question. How do That's something I wanted to ask you before. How do you partition tables?
We
How
don't
would you
have any
decide?
we don't have any partitioning right now. And that's a very good point. I mean, I think that's one of the things we need to look at is like, should we partition this data set by date, you know, somehow by year, something like that. And so one of the things that I think we should investigate is table partitioning.
Do you have a log? What you only have is what the user says it's the problem, right? You don't have a log of what was the most common columns uh,
No, but
used as a filter.
I think that Ravi has some, um, he has a list of some of the report, you know, the typical reports that they want to run and, you know, the issues with them. One of the things that had been a problem was the filters, like when you added enterprise, it would time out just trying to load the enterprises in. And that's why we went um, with this, uh, let me try to find it, bear with me. Um, where we ended up saying, you know, okay, you've got this POS check item um, hourly table, but it says, hey, you can use this POS check item day for aggregates if you want to, but then you can also use these, so you can tell this cube looks quite a bit different. And this was some stuff Nick had done. Where's the locations? So locations here, I'm trying to see where he used aggregate table for, I wasn't really involved in this, so some of this is kind of new to me. I would have thought it would have been here in the location dimension, but this is going straight against the cost location table.
I'm sorry. Do you have a data model?
A data model?
Yeah. I mean, a logical model, physical model, Erwin file. I don't know if you get
Yeah, I
what I'm trying to.
don't think we have what you're talking about.
Okay.
Um, and this stuff here, these aggregate tables are kind of new as one of the things that we were trying to use, and it helped. But what I'm not seeing, and I wasn't involved really in this part of it with what Nick had done. We created like this new ag check item by location table, but I'm trying to see, we've got measures and stuff, and I know it's sped up like inner location. It certainly sped up finding enterprises for the enterprise filter, but I'm not seeing what would have changed that. I would have thought it would have been in here, but I don't see anything about enterprises in here. And interesting. I guess what it does when you add enterprises, it knows that it can use one of these aggregate tables, like to go against the, where is it? GSH. I'm not seeing what would have changed that. Sorry, I'm I know we had quite a speed up when you added the enterprise filter, but I'm not seeing what would have made that change. Anyway, I don't know how to describe this very well other than when you look at the Mondrian documentation, this is how you define the cubes and the relationships between what it can use. And so I don't know what else.
Don't worry, I
what
will
else to
check
tell
on
you
that.
about this.
No, not a problem. That's my job.
But this is so the bottom line here is this is how you define the cubes, and we had to split out. We used to define in this item sales all three cubes, hourly, daily, and monthly in one file. We had trouble with that, so we broke it out into three files: daily, hourly, and monthly. And then and the difference between these three and the single files, these three use these aggregate tables. We were trying to tell Mondrian that it could use some of these other tables by using this, ag name key and the fact count and the foreign key and stuff to allow it to use these other tables if it thought it could. The rest of this is pretty much the same, where we define dimensions, and these are shared dimension between cubes. They don't have to be here. They could be defined down in the cube itself. If you have them defined outside, then you just say, I've got these dimension usages. Here's meal period, cashier, all those. Some of these, you have to look at what like high cardinality means. Foreign key is pretty straightforward. What's a foreign key in the table? And things like that, or foreign key from this table into the other one, because the actual dimension for meal period defines what its primary key is. And so you're saying, what's the key from the table for this cube into that other one? And then
Actually, looking at the cube, I think I can say what's the data model, what's the star schema.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we look at when we're using these, right? You've got the dimensions, and then you have the measures. These come from, obviously the table, what types they are, whether they're visible or not. There's actually a lot of things you can do with Mondrian. There's more properties than you see here. Like if you search for Mondrian, you can get you'll run into Pentaho documentation that talks about what all the elements are, the attributes, I guess, and like how to use an ag measure and things like that, and then hierarchies. There's a whole thing on how you define hierarchies. Our time one is probably the most confusing. You'll notice that there's a bunch of levels. I think in some of them we had multiple. Oh yeah, so you have this hierarchy. So here's another hierarchy within the time dimension hierarchy, and it's got a special type. They handle times kind of uniquely when you tell it it's a time hierarchy. So there's one hierarchy that shows, calendar month, calendar week, and then it going back over here, if you look at it would be nice to get these all together, these different levels, but we've had trouble with those, and then, so you'll see there's another, time is down here by itself, but it's so some of these are in one hierarchy, and then you've got another hierarchy, because I'm trying to remember, like sometimes you need to know the month separated out by year. So you have to do something special in these hierarchies, and that's why this one is kind of the way it is. You've got calendar day of week by itself, calendar day of month, and another calendar week of year. Quarters, they're kind of all in their own hierarchy, with this top one being, basically the hierarchy is year, quarter, month, week, day, and then full date being the most granular at the bottom of this hierarchy. But then calendar day of week had to be its own hierarchy, kind of split out on its own. But that's if you read in the Mondrian documentation about how to handle time dimensions, especially dates, that's why you have to do some kind of special things. And then these annotations basically are for formatting the output and how it's going to look. And then I don't know if you saw, but in the tenant database, there's a date table and a time table, as you probably expect, that have basically every date for, a wide range that lists out what the quarter is, what the year is. And so this thing just pulls from that, right? So like this pulls from time months, time quarter, time years, or that's the level type. Where's the column? Calendar year, calendar quarter, calendar month, week, calendar day of month for when you need the day of the month. And then you've got full date, just goes on a date key, but it pulls from, it's got a caption column that it pulls out of that date table. Anyway, hopefully that sort of gives you an idea, but it's all down in these cubes where we define them.
Yeah,
And then,
actually gave me a pretty good idea.
And they're all pretty much the same. The only difference with item sales being broken out into 3 of its own, but it's like tender has all the dimensions defined up here, and then you've got the cube for hourly, daily, monthly, and then each one of those says, hey, which table you're pulling out. Here's the dimensions. It can show up on the left-hand side, and here's the measures that show up on the left-hand side. So they're pretty. And then you'll notice this one has a calculated member net tender amount that's got, it actually does a Mondrian sort of calculation. It gives you a formula. So you can put in calculated members. There's other things, you can create virtual cubes. You can create like almost tables in line with the Mondrian. Like if there was stuff that you didn't want to make a call to the database for, but you wanted it in here, that was like some reference data that was, maybe days of the week isn't a good example, but server type or something that you didn't want to actually go do a join to a server type table. You could have it, you could declare that in line in the cube and say, that I've got this virtual table basically. So I guess the only recommendation is, search for Mondrian documentation. That'll give you they do a pretty good job of talking about all these elements and attributes and what they do. You can see how we've used them, how it, how it corresponds. So I guess this thing finally finished. But what else do I want to say about that? So it's pretty easy once you have your BA server up and running, either in a Vagrant box or in the vCloud, and then with data in a database. You could even point to like my database and get the same data if you didn't want to do a full ETL load into your database. You just change that data source of where it's pointing to, and you can get to this, get to our test data. You could point it, you might be, I don't know if you can point a local, you might be able to point a local BA server to the integration environment. I think you have to VPN on that. I don't know if you're remote, how that would work anyway, because like when you VPN in, you get into the the Agilysys domain, but then we have to end up, to get to the PPE environment or the integration environment, we have to VPN again to a different box, but I think you have to do it from the Agilysys. So I don't know, you might have to set up another like virtual machine to kind of do that double hop for you. But that is a way to kind of test a change to a cube. So when I'm modifying cubes, I go in and change them, and then I open up the this manage data sources, and I re-upload a cube, and then I can see my changes pretty much immediately. Sometimes I do have to go through and refresh some of the caches on that in order to blow that away, so it'll reload them to see the changes I've made in a cube. And like I said, there is a graphical interface to creating these cubes, but I tend not to use that. And I can go over that now or later with you, how that's done. It's been a while since I've done it. But I end up having to use the tools box in my vCloud. Are you interested in seeing that now or later? Or? Are you there?
I'm sorry. What was the last thing you said?
Well, I said there is a graphical tool for editing the cubes, and I was just going to see if I could. I do it from this tools machine that's in my V app. I'll see if this comes up. It's been a long time since I've used this tool, so I'm okay. It's a schema workbench. So let's see if this will open up. See if I have one here. I don't even know if I have one here. Is it administrator? Sorry. Is not a very good interface. I don't know if I have any monitoring files up here. I'd have to. Let me take a look to see if I've got anything. I don't think I have any. I don't think I have anything up here. Otherwise, but you can run that schema workbench, and you can, you can do some things, and it's not necessarily a bad tool, but it's sort of a graphical interface. So what I would do is like either load the schema workbench locally, if you can run it on a Windows machine. I don't know if it runs under Linux. but then you can you can load one of those Mondrian cubes, and it will show you kind of the things, and you can graphically then build up your cube that way. It doesn't necessarily support all the elements and attributes, and so that's why sometimes we just, or most of the time, we just edit them manually. But there is this schema workbench, and then while we're here, there's also this under the Pentaho Enterprise Edition. Crap, it's not what I wanted. Under here, under the design tools, there's also the data integration, which, let me close this, which is if you're editing a kettle file, helps quite a bit. And you do that in this data integration studio again. Anyway, that's sort of a side note from the cubes. It's a different thing. But there are, just be aware that there are these Pentaho tools that you can use that are on this machine. A person might actually need to put the latest ones there if you decide to use those set of tools, because this is version 5.0 GA, and I think we're on 5.1.2. Yeah, and you gotta fiddle with the licensing. This is all documented under Pentaho. Anyway, I'm going to close this window.
Actually, I downloaded Pentaho about a month ago.
Okay.
But the evaluation edition, and it has just expired.
And so we have the the Enterprise Edition, and so it comes with all those tools. Like I said, about the only time I go in to use those tools is if I'm editing, and I'm going to do a video on it, but if I'm editing these files that are, I think they're up here. Yeah, these X actions. Is it the X actions? Let me just look. Yeah, these things, I think it's, no, it's the KTR files. I have to find them, but I don't think it's these X actions. These ones, they may have tools around editing these X actions. Where is that? Anyway, there's some files that are, if you don't use that editor, for these KTR files, and I think they're down. Could be PDI repository. Yeah, these are the KTR files. So we don't, this used to be what drove our ETL process way back when. And so, but there's still a couple of these that we still use, and I don't think the ones on, maybe, anyway, you pretty much, if you look at these things, they're, they can be kind of horrible. And like this is, SQL that's loaded, and these were all this is how Pentaho for their PDI server stores all the steps that you go through for a transformation, but they're really hard to look at this way, and so that's when you load that. You use the Pentaho tools, and then it makes nice files are that scheme with the stuff over there. we don't have to worry about that now. And I am
Actually,
yeah,
actually, that graphical interface, that's the interpretation of all that metadata is what more what I am used to program and ETL.
yeah,
It's
and
just for the record.
yeah, and I was too. I used to use that in my previous job because we did there was a lot. It was all driven by those kettle files, basically, right? And putting, hey, I've got a data source. Here's what I'm going to read. Then it's going to move. Then I'm going to transfer these rows over, and so um, this is all this PDI repository is all the old uh, kettle files and stuff. And so when you use that workbench or whatever it was, it would show you all these things nicely. And since we had the enterprise version, it was checked into the PDI repository, and so you'd connect to that repository. They were all there. You could edit them, but we have moved totally away from that, to our own ETL. And then now all we really use is there are a couple of those kettle files that are used in X actions when you log on to do some things. And I've got to refresh my memory about where those are. And I was planning on doing a video later about that and how to edit those particular ones, because it is kind of very specific how you edit those and how those are hooked up. But we don't use the the PDI server anymore. There used to be a separate PDI server machine. So we really just use the BA server and load those Mondrian cubes into it. Kind of for grins, the Ansible is our scripting that we install stuff. So if you're going to install the BA server, it says, hey, install these roles, common, which is really just Java. Make sure Tomcat's there, make sure Postgres is installed, and then this BADB server. And so if you look at the roles, and then you have this BA app server. What I was going to show you is on this BA app server, there's a whole bunch of tasks, and it starts with main, and some of this stuff is data clean, and so each one of these little things is kind of a step that it'll do, and so it's waiting for Tomcat. It's going to load the initial page. It's going to get and then this is doing some. They sort of have a RESTful or an API interface. The BA server does. It's not real easy to use, but basically we get the demo user for Pat or that folder, and then we remove the data with this HTTP command, and these things with double curly braces around it. Ansible will populate that with those properties. So whatever the context root, it calls this, where we pass in the body and the user. And so this thing is basically deleting some of the stuff that gets installed by default when you install the BA server. So these folders for Susie, Tiffany, Pat, gets rid of the steel wheels folder. And so what I wanted to show you, and then we empty the trash, and then gets rid of the sample data, demo data sources. So this is how the Ansible install scripts out all this stuff, and I kind of have separated out into this does the demo data cleanup, the install. And these names are, where I create like the admin folder, I make it hidden, create the, is this a DW? Yeah, this is, it gets this, and then if you don't have it right, where if this thing comes back and tells you whether it's failed or not. So if it's, it will go ahead and create the DW Agilysys one using their, basically it makes a call to their API, which is, like I said, not very easy to understand. But it goes ahead and it creates that, that data source that we saw automatically for you. And before, I know if you think this looks crazy, before when you installed the BA server, these were all manual steps that you had to do after you installed it. It was pretty awful. And so anyway, then we create special data sources for the prompts, like this calendar date prompt, location date prompt. This is where we actually upload the Mondrian cubes. We basically point it at this Mondrian cube directory. So one of the steps is the cubes. Let's say you make a new cube over here and you call it something and you just stick it in this folder, then it will get, these all get zipped up and pushed out with our distribution. So when this Ansible script runs, it uploads that zip file, unzips it, and then basically for every one of those Mondrian one of those cube files in this dir, it will go ahead and try to run this. It calls Java, passing in basically calling this command line in processor with import, and then basically it calls that Java import for importing these cubes. So that one doesn't use their API in the BA server. It uses this a special Java file that they've got for which you would run from the command line. So it's basically automating stuff that we would do from the command line. And then basically we clean up that cube directory. And then here's like where we upload the X-action steps and copy in the get user locations KTR. So that's that KTR file I was telling you about. That's a kind of a special one for login. Back here, there's not so much that one, but oh, there's the login get user KTR. This is the one that's actually used, and there's a couple places in here where we have. I guess if I looked for, yeah, in this KTR file, when this thing installs, it'll actually put in the data warehouse IP address, the data warehouse name, port, username, and password for connection information. Wonder what else it. Yeah, these are other properties that we change during the install. You know, like this one's for LDAP type stuff. And again, you can see where we put in the DC host, the admin password, the CN. These are properties that come out when you do your install. You set these properties to kind of tell where LDAP is and stuff like that. And so these all get changed and copied in various steps within these tasks when we configure it. I've probably gone way too deep on this particular thing, so sorry for that. But I kind of wanted to show you what, you know, some of the how we install stuff on the BA server as well, and how we upload the cubes and things like that. It's I'll go over this information again in a video, so at least you've heard it once. Let's see, where did you go? There you went. So I felt like I sort of rambled this time. Sorry about that. You know, we did kind of go over the cubes. Just to recap, we went over the cubes, how they're uploaded into the BA server, sort of what the BA server looked like and how it generates reports, and how you can um, sort of got a taste for how you can look at the SQL output and things like that. I think that, if you look at the Mondrian documentation, now you know where our cubes are and kind of how they're defined. You also see how the BA server knows which database to go to through that. I went kind of far afield with talking about how we do the install of the BA server and how those get installed when we upload. So it makes it pretty easy for the developer. You just go in and you change the cube and you do a build, and then when you install a new BA server, they're there. Right now, that install, to still harp on that, you can't reinstall. You can't run that install again. So if it craps out partway through, it's not very forgiving. You pretty much have to flatten the machine and reinstall it. The install takes, 5-10 minutes to run through its scripts. But if you already have a BA server up and you want to test new cubes, you modify your cube and you just upload it manually through the user interface. I know we kind of got far afield with some of those KTRs and some of the other things that get installed, but at least in those roles, Ansible's another thing that is marginally interesting to look at. It's fairly straightforward. I think those names are pretty good about like what it's doing, even if it's not entirely obvious with the command, especially for removing like the users and stuff. You may never get into that and have to deal with that, or you might. But it kind of shows you what we have a lot that we have to do with the BA server as far as white labeling. And again, I'm going to try to cover those in some other videos that, if and when you get to the point would shed some light on it. There's some obscurity about what happens with those, some of the settings within BA server and which files, but it comes down to just a handful of files that sort of control security and some of those things, and aren't directly related to running the reports. The big things is really the cubes and the schema of the data warehouse and defining that relationship. And personally, I've had, getting the cubes to where they are now has taken, I think, a lot of work. But I think there's other things that, efficiencies can be done with Mondrian. And there was a setting. Now, I'll just share again. There was a setting that we had to change to allow the aggregate tables, and I'm trying to think. Bear with me a second. Up under the so this is where we white label. So in this file, and this is kind of, it's in the Pentaho Solutions zip update. There's several, these are the top level folders that basically we pull out of Artifactory, we unzip them, and then in this case, like we'll replace this file. So anything that's in this directory under Business Analyzer basically gets replaced or put in on top of what's already there. So they already have a Mondrian's property file. We replace it with this one, and then everything gets zipped up. And then during the installation, we sometimes replace some other files. That's what happens down here in these template files of the Ansible stuff. But this particular one, to allow Mondrian, we had to change these two to true because they were defaulted to false. And so that's why this file is in here. It's exactly like what we get from... yeah.
Robert, I'm sorry. I am not... are you sharing your screen?
I thought I was. Sorry, let me...
Yeah.
Let me go back there and make sure I'm, oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, I'll go over this again. So under Business Analyzer, these files here, these are the top level. We pull, for instance, this Pentaho Solutions zip updates folder out, and in the system directory, there's a folder called Mondrian, and we replace it with this one that's here. And the only difference between this and the one that's in that one that we pulled out of Artifactory is these two properties up at the top, where we set those to true. So anything that appears in this directory over here, like security properties, let me just look at, like, we replaced the fave icon in this Pentaho style WAR update. So these top level ones are ones that Pentaho gives us. This is how we white label the application. We pull like this Pentaho style WAR updates. We unzip it. We replace this fav icon, and then we WAR it. The other thing that affects it, though, that is, like here under Pentaho Solutions System, like we replace this settings file when we're doing the install. And the thing with these is, like I said before, is these are Ansible template files, so these things that have double curly braces get replaced when we copy those in. So there's kind of two things that we do. Is when we actually do a build, we pull these zip or these archives out, unarchive them, replace them with whatever's in here, like the icon, or in this case the Mondrian properties file, and then when we go through the install of these things to install the BA server, which is basically like unwarring them into specific spots. And then we also, some of those tasks actually replace things like these, for LDAP, JDBC. This is another one where we have, it's got in there, the data source URL is coded in, so you have to have the install do that. Anyway, that's, I don't know how to explain it any better right now, but those are the kind of the two things that we do to build the BA server. It's the white labeling stuff up here under the top. So if you ever ran and you were doing Mondrian stuff and there was, let's say, some other file in one of these folders, you'd go ahead and add that file in here with your changes, just like we used to not have a Mondrian separate one in here. And so, but we needed to change those two properties, so we went ahead and just put one in here and it replaces the one that came with it. That's the idea anyway. And so like if you came down and you needed to change this and said, well, really when we default install, this needs to be 200, if, I don't know, if that's what we do, but there's possibly some, as you explore things, Pentaho may say, oh, here's some properties that you need to change. The only thing I could think of, and maybe we save that for another day, is when we get this installed, I'll show you where the BA server gets installed and where all these property files go. Their hierarchy structure is pretty large, but there's usually only a few places that you have to look for things. So I probably rambled way too long on this.
Hola, hola. No. The last part was not so easy to understand, but
Yeah.
again, let me see it and let me check on the documentation and complete with your videos and stuff.
Yeah, and
Fortunately, by fortune, I have my the IT people is telling me that tomorrow early I'm gonna have my computer back, so I think there I will address more questions, more proper questions to you.
Okay.
So um, how are we going to organize? Maybe tomorrow, what I would propose is the following. Maybe tomorrow I can try to set up my development environment, talk to the guys here, and maybe I can drop you some questions if I have problems, and then tomorrow, Wednesday, we can continue the with the videos, with the hangouts. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe we can, maybe the next thing is to make sure that you can uh, run some of the code in Vagrant. We can go through an install, or at least I can share my screen and I can do an install, and uh, we can look at that and um, try to get your VApp environment set up. If make sure that you can log into it, you can then create the VApp, and then we can kind of go through some of those things that way. And then kind of on your own, or we can work through it together. Is making sure that you can get the project and build it. But we've dealt a lot with some of the different things in the project, but there's nothing like actually building it and then going through some installs on Vagrant, seeing what it does, and then that way it kind of gives you a sort of a feeling for these different bits and pieces. The BA server. Let me just answer this to Ryan. Uh, so maybe we just do that. Some of this was hard for me to try to delineate the lines. There's like so much there. It's kind of that's why I tried to recap and say the cubes are a big one. Look at the cubes, and then when you get your own BA server set up and we tie it to a database, that way you can start playing with it. And maybe we tie it to an existing database. So you don't get sidetracked too much in looking at the ETL and until you want to do that. With Roberto, I want him to basically set up a full system and then run the ETL, make sure he knows that the ETL is working and stuff like that. But like yours, I'm kind of thinking, well, really the first thing is, why don't we go ahead and at least install the BA server, get that tied to a data source, even if it's not in your VApp. It could be to another one that's already got data in it. Later, you could switch it over to, hey, I want to do an ETL into my own tenant database, change the data, that sort of thing. So I'm still trying to kind of paint that broad picture of these. I think the complexity comes in is that we've got a lot of moving pieces. None of them are too difficult, for the most part. It's just kind of, you're getting familiar with the pieces and what's in there. So sorry for my rambling, but I think as time goes on, it'll become clear how these pieces fit together and what they do. I think you have a pretty good idea of, the ETL process, but now and then a fairly good idea of like, oh, okay, here's the cubes. That's how it relates to stuff on the screen. What the database structure looks like, but then there's also that whole complexity of how do we install the BA server, and there's some kind of strangeness there because it's Pentaho. And I tried to sort of go over that, but hopefully I'll be a little more in some of the videos I go through. I'm going to try to cover that same stuff, but in maybe a more systematic way.
Not a problem. Actually, you are doing a really good job
Oh, well, thank you.
showing me stuff. Yeah.
I
No problem, no problem. Actually, that's the way I prefer to learn stuff. I basically try to understand the whole thing as a process. Then I go deep and deep and deep well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump on that other call, so I will see you tomorrow morning probably, or whenever. So,
Okay. Maybe tomorrow I'll drop some questions via Slack, and
okay.
maybe we can coordinate another meeting, another hangout.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's working well for me. So, just let me know. I don't think I've got too much going on tomorrow. So, I'll probably be trying to do more um, of these videos and such. So,
So I will interrupt you
oh,
when I
no,
when I when I please.
no, what
No.
I'm
Sorry,
saying
sorry.
is, I don't pretty much interrupt me anytime. I'm not, it's really this, trying to get you up to speed and trying to get these videos. So that is my focus. So unless there's any production issues or anything, I should be A-okay. So drop me a line anytime.
Okay. So talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Have a good night.
Have a good night too. Bye.
Okay, bye.